This is a CBS News special report. I'm Norah O'Donnell here in Washington, and we are coming on the air as special counsel Jack Smith is delivering remarks on the indictment of former President Donald Trump any moment from now. Just over an hour and a half ago, the 38-count indictment was unsealed, 37 of them specifically targeting Mr. Trump. And the accusations made in this indictment are stunning. They allege that the National Archives repeatedly demanded that the former president turn over classified documents beginning in May of 2021. The charges against the former president include willful retention of national defense information, conspiracy to obstruct justice, withholding a document or record, corruptly concealing a document or record, and concealing a document in a federal investigation, scheme to conceal, and false statements and representations.
This just happened, and it's not business as usual in Washington. A federal judge has made a decision that effectively blew the doors wide open, ordering the release of previously sealed evidence connected to President Trump's ongoing court battles. And the fallout was immediate. Within hours of those materials becoming public, Congress erupted. What matters here is the speed. This wasn't a slow burn. The moment the sealed evidence was unsealed, lawmakers began reacting in real time. And this time, they didn't reach for the familiar playbook. Instead of calls for hearings, investigations, or drawn-out committee reviews, some members of Congress went straight to something far more serious: direct demands for Trump's arrest. Yes, that is exactly what is being said. Not impeachment rhetoric, not procedural maneuvering, actual explicit calls for arrest. And what makes this moment even more extraordinary is where those calls are coming from. This reaction is not confined to one side of the aisle. Democrats are openly demanding action, while a number of Republicans, though more subdued in public, are privately acknowledging that the situation requires a response. In today's political climate, that kind of cross-party alignment is almost unheard of. This is why it's important not to dismiss what's happening as typical Washington drama. This isn't the usual cycle of outrage, statements, and cable news noise that fades in a few days. The atmosphere feels fundamentally different. There's a sense that events have crossed a threshold, moving beyond the normal boundaries of political theater and into territory the system is not accustomed to navigating. There is much more to unpack here. The implications of these newly released materials, the legal exposure they may create, and the political consequences that could follow are significant. I have more to lay out. But before we go any further, take a moment to listen to this statement from Special Counsel Jack Smith.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged. The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice.
I understand precisely what's running through your head at this moment. Yet another Trump story, yet another legal tangle, yet another cycle of political turbulence dominating the headlines. However, there's something that sets this particular situation apart from everything that's come before. This time we're talking about sealed records, files that were meant to remain permanently hidden from public scrutiny, documentation that judges intentionally locked away from everyone's eyes for specific reasons, and now an individual with genuine power has determined that American citizens deserve to see what's been concealed inside those records. Consider that for a moment. What could these files possibly contain that caused Congress to react like someone pulled a fire alarm just one day after viewing them? Congress only moves with this kind of speed when the material they're examining is truly explosive. The only way you get representatives from opposing parties demanding action simultaneously is when everyone present examined identical evidence and reached the same determination about its severity. That kind of unified response doesn't occur under typical political circumstances. The sequence of events here carries significant weight. We're discussing January 2025 when the Justice Department began filing paperwork to transfer Special Counsel Jack Smith's classified documents report to Congress. Democrats were already pushing for complete transparency. They demanded everything be placed on the table. They wanted American citizens to understand in detail exactly what transpired. And then, unexpectedly, a judge intervenes and chooses to unseal the evidence without delay. No more postponements, no more carefully controlled information releases. Suddenly, it seemed like someone threw a lit match onto gasoline-drenched rags. Everything burst into flames simultaneously. The carefully orchestrated release that the Justice Department believed it could manage transformed into an uncontrolled, highly public revelation of previously sealed classified material. And that single judgment reversed the entire approach Congress planned to take regarding the situation. Rather than gradual procedural hearings, you had legislators openly discussing consequences immediately. Representative Jamie Raskin posted on X and made it abundantly clear that the Department of Justice couldn't simply remain idle and act like nothing was occurring if genuine criminal behavior existed inside those files. He wasn't advocating for another prolonged, lackluster investigation. He was insisting on real progress, not the typical slow-motion procedure where attorneys spend 5 years debating technicalities while the public forgets what triggered the scandal initially. His statement was straightforward. If the evidence truly indicates what people believe it indicates, then the department has an obligation to take action. They must treat it seriously. They must treat it as criminal behavior. And this wasn't just some insignificant backbencher making noise. This is a congressional member who serves on influential committees, someone with legitimate influence, calling out the Justice Department for potentially stalling. This is a legislator with actual power stating the government must respond swiftly and decisively to whatever's hidden in those files. Then you have Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, directly stating that sealed files can't serve as protection for corruption. In her own words, the American people deserve the truth no matter how high the corruption might reach. Pause and consider the significance of that declaration. A Republican senator is contending that the public has a right to discover what might harm a Republican president. That's not how party allegiance typically functions in contemporary American politics. In modern Washington, the standard playbook is that party members protect their own leader. They minimize, redirect, and postpone. They don't grab a megaphone and insist on transparency regarding something that could damage their own team. So, when a Republican abandons that pattern and makes such a statement, it conveys a powerful message. It reveals that whatever exists in those documents isn't merely somewhat embarrassing. It indicates that the contents are profoundly troubling. This is precisely the type of declaration that reveals there must be something genuinely disturbing contained in those files. You're observing someone who's prepared to risk backlash from her own party because she believes that honesty matters more than protecting the brand. That by itself should indicate how grave this has gotten. So what we're confronting here is a perfect storm. You have sealed evidence that was never intended to be revealed. You have federal judges making the decision to unseal it regardless. You have Democrats insisting that everything be made public. You have Republicans declaring that truth is more valuable than loyalty to a president. And you have Congress as an institution practically spiraling, demanding action within hours of seeing what's genuinely inside those records. This is one of those moments where everything shifts. This is the type of situation where something that was politically impossible just yesterday suddenly becomes politically inevitable today. The classified documents component of this story is massive, and we'll explore that more deeply momentarily. But the fundamental outline is straightforward. President Trump apparently had classified documents kept at Mar-a-Lago. At this stage, that aspect is not really contested. Investigators discovered them. The courts verified that they were discovered. The genuine questions have always been what he did with those materials, why he retained them, and whether there was any intent to obstruct justice or compromise national security. Those are the questions that have been hiding inside sealed records. Those are the matters that judges have kept away from public view. And now those questions are being addressed out in the open. Before we proceed any further and dissect the next layers of this, there's something significant I need to tell you. And, well, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to ask you to subscribe to our channel. If you want to get breaking news and stay informed about what the mainstream media doesn't reveal, this is the correct place. So, make certain to subscribe so you don't miss anything. It assists us tremendously to keep delivering high-quality content to you. Thank you, and continuing because here is where the story becomes even more intense. This isn't just about classified folders sitting forgotten in a storage room. This situation connects to everything. It links directly to the January 6th investigations. It connects to all of the accusations about coordination behind the scenes. It opens doors for Congress to begin asking difficult questions about who was collaborating with whom. It raises questions about connections between the Trump organization, political allies, and anyone else who might have been involved. Once you open sealed files, you don't simply reveal a single scandal. You pull on threads that extend in every direction. You uncover overlaps between different investigations. You discover pieces of evidence that could implicate multiple people in multiple different activities across multiple years. That's why members of Congress are in panic mode. That's why you're hearing bipartisan calls for concrete action. That's why some lawmakers are openly using the word arrest in their public statements. Whatever is in these files seems to connect multiple things together. Multiple investigations, multiple possible violations, multiple individuals who might have participated in activities that violated the law. At this stage, it's not just a Trump story. It's a story about a larger pattern of alleged misconduct that appears to have shocked everyone who has seen the evidence. The timing makes everything even more volatile. President Trump is currently serving his second term. This isn't about some former leader who departed office years ago. This isn't ancient history. This is developing while he's actively in the White House, while his administration is attempting to advance policy on the economy, immigration, and every other major issue. And suddenly, right in the middle of all that, a political bomb detonates, and Congress is demanding answers. His presidency is now operating under a dark cloud of scandal. His entire agenda is overshadowed by this crisis. That's the main hook. That's why this story matters right now. Sealed files were broken open. Evidence that was supposed to stay buried is now exposed, and Congress went from silence to full volume discussing real consequences in less than 24 hours. This is the kind of development that transforms the landscape. This is the kind of turning point where something that seemed politically unthinkable suddenly appears very possible. Stay with me, because now we're going to break down what's actually inside those records, what Congress is really demanding, and why this goes far beyond another headline about Trump. So let's walk through what's really unfolding here, because many people are completely misinterpreting this story. Many believe it's just about some papers, just about files that shouldn't have been sitting at Mar-a-Lago, but this story is much larger than that. It's far more complicated than a simple procedural mistake. What we're dealing with is an investigation that appears to have revealed serious criminal activity, and now the government is grappling with how to respond. The classified documents investigation started years ago. Federal agents literally entered Mar-a-Lago with a warrant. They searched the property, they went through different rooms, and they discovered classified materials. That part is documented. It occurred. What nobody fully grasped until now was the true extent of what those files contained, what Trump might have done with them, who else might have been involved, and what the profound legal consequences were. People didn't know because judges locked that information away, they sealed it, they ensured the public didn't see it, they prevented the media from reporting the precise details, they stopped Congress from officially reviewing every element, so everyone was essentially navigating in the dark while the legal machinery operated behind closed doors. Then something shifted. Sometime in January 2025, the Justice Department began advocating for a change. And this part is crucial. The Justice Department itself started requesting for special counsel Jack Smith's classified documents report to be shared with Congress. Democrats responded by stating they needed complete transparency. They argued that every detail had to be examined. They insisted on understanding what really happened. Judges apparently concurred. The courts reviewed the request and determined that the American people had a right to know what the investigation revealed. They recognized that the government has an obligation to be transparent about the evidence it obtained and about the conclusions investigators reached. This is where most people lose track of the real story. When you unseal files in a classified documents case, you're not just dumping raw documents onto a table. You are exposing the analysis that investigators constructed. You're revealing their conclusions. You're disclosing evidence about intent, motive, and state of mind. You're uncovering links between different people. You're making public the legal theory about whether crimes may have been committed. You're revealing how prosecutors framed the entire case. If there is material in Jack Smith's report that suggests President Trump or people in his inner circle did more than just mishandle documents, if it implies that they intentionally violated the law, then of course Congress is going to insist on a response. That's exactly what lawmakers are supposed to do when they encounter evidence that could threaten the integrity of the government. Representative Jamie Raskin's comments are especially revealing here. He said in essence that the Department of Justice can't simply sit on potential criminal conduct if it exists. That's his way of informing the department that either they move forward with enforcement or Congress is going to consider its own options. And remember, Raskin sits on the House Judiciary Committee. He has real influence. When he makes a statement like that, it's more than rhetorical fire. It's a direct warning that Congress is prepared to act. The reason some Republicans are also stepping into this fight, and this is the part that shocks many people, is that a few of them still care about the health of institutions more than blind partisan loyalty. Lisa Murkowski has a reputation for that. She's a Republican who has demonstrated she will break with her party when she believes principle is at stake. By saying that Americans deserve to know what's in those files, she's making a huge statement. That's not something you casually say if the evidence looks weak, if the materials were flimsy or questionable. She would likely stay quiet and let others do the talking. The fact that she's speaking publicly suggests that she has seen enough to believe something serious took place. That's a signal to anyone paying attention that this isn't political theater built on nothing. There's substance behind the concern. So the real story here has moved beyond the simple question of whether classified documents were lying in the wrong place. It's about what the investigation actually discovered. It's about networks of people and actions. It's about timelines, decisions, intent, and knowledge. It's about whether laws were broken deliberately by individuals who understood that what they were doing was illegal. And this investigation doesn't exist in isolation. It intersects with other major events. It connects directly to the January 6th inquiries and what different people were doing around that time. It brings together questions about coordination inside Trump's circle. It raises issues about whether the Trump Organization itself was involved in or helped facilitate questionable behavior. Once these files are unsealed, you're not just releasing a single storyline. You're exposing a set of threads that law enforcement has been pulling for years. You're revealing connections that the public didn't know about. You're laying out patterns that were hidden behind sealed doors. Think about it logically. Why would Congress immediately start talking about arrests if this were simply about mishandled storage of documents? That wouldn't make sense. You don't call emergency sessions over filing errors or office procedures. You do that when an investigation appears to show actual criminal conduct. You do that when there's evidence of deliberate wrongdoing, when it looks like people knowingly crossed red lines. The bipartisan reaction tells you even more. Democrats are naturally inclined to push for accountability here. That's entirely predictable. Their voters expect that. But Republicans aren't usually eager to join in. Normally they defend their own leader, question the motives of investigators, and warn people to wait before making judgments. And they ask for time, for more context, for every last detail. So when Republicans start saying that something has to change, that some kind of action has to be taken, it means the evidence is probably very damaging. It means even people who want to support the president are looking at the facts and saying, this is too serious to brush off. The Justice Department's role in all of this is also crucial. Most people underestimate how much authority the department actually has. Jack Smith, as special counsel, had enormous freedom. He could subpoena witnesses. He could interview almost anyone. He could trace leads across different locations. He could put together a comprehensive case. His investigation evidently uncovered material serious enough that the Justice Department concluded Congress should be allowed to review it. That's no minor decision. The department doesn't normally hand over investigation files unless they believe there's something major at stake. Typically, justice protects its work, especially when cases are ongoing. Yet, in January 2025, they shifted course and said, Congress should see the findings. They said, in effect, release it and let lawmakers understand what we discovered. That's a major change in posture. Now, months later, judges are fully unsealing the evidence. Congress is seeing everything. They're reviewing the investigation, the conclusions, the connections, and any signs of wrongdoing. And within 24 hours of gaining that access, they began calling for action. Within a day of reading what investigators found, some members were publicly talking about arrest. That alone shows how serious the material appears to be. It also shows how damaging it could be for Trump and his defense. This isn't just another scandal that will fade away when the news cycle moves on. This is an investigation that seems to have documented real problems, and the system is now struggling with what to do next. The courts have forced a level of transparency. Congress is reacting to that transparency by demanding that something be done, and Trump's presidency is now operating under the weight of this crisis. For Trump and his inner circle, the most frightening part of all of this is that it's not based on rumors or anonymous sources. It's not a leak from someone hiding behind a curtain. It's not a random whistleblower whose claims can't be verified. This is an official federal investigation with formal findings that have been unsealed by a federal judge and handed to Congress. It's the government's own machinery flagging problems. It's the system that Trump technically leads at the highest level, now presenting evidence that could be used against him. That's drastically different from partisan attacks. This is the state itself saying something might have gone very wrong. So what does all of this really mean for you, watching this play out in 2025 while Trump is still in office? It means this isn't a story about the distant past. It's unfolding in the present. It's happening while the administration is trying to govern, pass laws, and steer the country. Point one, the evidence is real and official. This isn't some fantasy cooked up by people who dislike Trump. This is Jack Smith's work. He was appointed by the Justice Department to look specifically at how Trump handled classified materials. He had investigators, prosecutors, and the full weight of federal authority behind him. That investigation found things important enough that the Justice Department and federal judges agreed they should be shared and even unsealed. We're not dealing with speculation here. We're dealing with documentation, with testimony, with physical evidence that investigators collected. People can debate what that evidence proves. They can argue over whether it rises to the level of crimes that will stand up in court. They can disagree on interpretations and legal theories, but they can't deny that the investigation took place or that the evidence exists. It's in the record. It's real. Point two, this blows up everything Trump is trying to accomplish. In practical terms, the president is trying to run the country. He's managing the economy, pushing immigration policy, handling foreign relations, and dealing with all the normal responsibilities of the office. Now, on top of that, Congress has to respond to this newly unsealed material. Lawmakers are forced to spend energy on a potential criminal crisis involving the president himself. That's a massive distraction. It's a huge political liability that won't quietly disappear. It consumes attention in Washington. It dominates the news. It makes allies nervous and hesitant. It makes moderates ask whether they want to stake their careers on someone who might be dragged into a long legal battle. You can't realistically expect Congress to focus on infrastructure or tax reform while half the building is talking about evidence of criminal conduct at the highest level. The government's attention shifts. The political oxygen in the room gets sucked into this scandal. Point three, the fact that this has a bipartisan edge changes everything. Washington these days is defined by tribal loyalty. People defend their side almost automatically. Facts often come second. But now you have some Republicans openly acknowledging that this is serious. They're saying truth matters more than protecting one person. When Lisa Murkowski says sealed files can't be used as a hiding place for corruption and that Americans deserve answers, she's pushing back against that tribal instinct. She's signaling an institutional crisis rather than a purely partisan fight. When figures in both parties show concern, it tells you that something deeper is at stake. Point four, what comes next is going to reshape the landscape. Congress now has the full set of findings from Jack Smith's team. They have the evidence that judges allowed to be unsealed. They have the responsibility to decide how to respond. They can push the Justice Department to prosecute. They can launch their own aggressive investigations with hearings and subpoenas. They can raise the prospect of impeachment. They can pressure Trump to resign. or they can do nothing and hope that people move on. But that last option is more fantasy than reality. The evidence is public now. The statements have been made. The calls for action are on record. If Congress simply walks away, it sends the message that the government is willing to tolerate whatever happened. Politically, that would haunt them for years. So they'll be forced into some kind of visible response. That process will dominate the news. It will shape Trump's ability to govern. It will color every decision his administration makes. That's the real takeaway. Unsealing this kind of evidence is rare. Having judges release this level of material is rare. Watching Congress react this quickly across party lines is rare. Seeing all of those things happen at the same time is almost unheard of in modern American politics. It tells you that something serious appears to have happened. It tells you that the evidence is strong enough that serious people in government feel compelled to respond. It tells you that whatever the investigation uncovered can't easily be ignored or buried. No one knows yet exactly how this ends. Maybe it results in charges, maybe it leads to impeachment, maybe it becomes the defining crisis of Trump's second term. What's clear is that from this moment on, his presidency operates under a shadow that won't vanish quickly. That's where we are right now. That's the reality Congress is facing. And whatever happens next is going to shape American politics.